It is a long-awaited upgrade to our iconic mascot of Medarot S. It is KXK01 Cross Messiah Z, with a kit of Full Charge Kai, Spark Shot, Spark Strike, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Anger, which buffs power when an ally takes damage and loses a part. Now, honestly, across the board, Cross Messiah alone, even just as a starter model, already had a pretty solid kit all around, even as a Medaforce reliant fighter with Charge Buster and Charge Blade. But Cross Z honestly takes that and amps it up about 5 levels higher with what he offers, with not just new skills across the board, but all 3 of his parts and his leg ability are entirely brand new and making their official debut to the game with this model. Full Charge Kai is simply just a variant of Full Charge, relatively similar to how Ultrasium's Full Charge gave Shoot Boost, but in this case what happens instead, Full Charge Kai will give you a full charge of your Medaforce gauge, sapping from your head HP, but also apply a Conceal effect to self, so it does give you that passive boost to your evade, and your complete immunity to any incoming pierce damage attacks for your next hit and incoming turn. Right Arm of Spark Shot is a simple shooting-based skill that will consume 10 CG upon attack, but it also buffs the cooldown state of your next attack/turn by 50%. The left arm, on the other hand, is Spark Strike, which does the same thing as a melee skill, but instead buffs your heat stat of your next turn by 50%. Now, honestly, this alone is a massive, massive buff that you could make use of and capitalize on very heavily with your much stronger parts that have lower heat or cool. Say, for instance, they did mention in this week's video on Cross talking about, say, pairing it with Ghost or Ghost Shot that usually have very high base power, but a very, very low heat and cooldown that will take you some time to prep it ahead of time. Now, the drawback, of course, to Spark Shot and Strike is that if you do not have any charge upon using the attack, you will not get that buff naturally. So it will be very important to capitalize on that, and in order to make use of it, it is highly encouraged that you do pair off Cross Z with either a Hunter or Sniper nature medal to capitalize on that. Since Spark Shot and Strike are still attacks, you can still capitalize on breaking parts and getting that Medaforce bonus upon breaking parts with those 2 metal natures listed. The Anger leg ability also does kind of tie into this pretty nicely as a passive, especially more of a Revenger kind of passive in this case, as, say, for instance, if you make use of someone who has Sacrifice, or something of the like where it breaks parts, or a failed assassin attempt, this actually would tie into that very heavily, as pretty much any time an ally will have a part broken on the field, that's basically a passive damage buff to Cross Z right off the top, or anyone that's using his legs, which means his already pretty impressive skills across the board are going to be even stronger as you choose to use them and parts get broken as a way to, again, kind of punish in a revenge kind of way the opposing enemies for damaging and injuring an ally. As a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Cross Z a pretty solid 9 out of 10 across the board. Very solid stats across the board. His arms are just a little squishy at about 2650 and about 2800 HP per part, but his head at about 3500 and his legs about 39, almost 4000 HP across the board means he's pretty solid about being able to take a hit without it hurting him too heavily. Mobility of 921 alone makes him fantastically wonderful for that high speed, even if his shoot and melee resist are just a little bit less than desirable at about 800 or 860 each. An evade of 984 isn't really too bad, but with a heavy capacity of 2, very solid legs overall across the board. Now, as mixed parts, I would honestly also have to rate him at a 9.5 out of 10 for the same reasons. Pretty much for anyone I'm going to make this statement pretty much as a full declaration and pretty much a summation of how to summarize Cross Z. If you are a Cross Messiah main, or you use his parts on anyone in your builds, you absolutely will want to go after Cross Z, because he is more or less a complete and perfect direct upgrade, with really no major drawback to using his parts at all. The only drawback in this case being in particular that his head is now considered heavy, where in contrast his arms no longer are not. Cross Z also is capable of Medachange, where he transforms into a tank-based mode and exchanges his kit for Overcharge, Acg Shot, Force Control, Tank Legs, and the G Control leg ability, which grants S rank to all terrains upon meeting a certain Medaforce charge. Now, this honestly ties into Cross's kit, especially as a Medaforce reliant fighter, right from the top and almost instantaneously, which makes even a tank-based type leg like this wonderful and incredibly dangerous to use on the field. Overcharge we have seen before on Cheerful Bunny, but what it does is that upon attacking an opponent, it will fill their Medaforce gauge by about 15%, and if it damages opponent with a full Medaforce charge, you get a times 5, if I recall correctly, damage bonus, and the attack also converts into an AoE for an even higher damage punish, especially to Medaforce reliant nukers such as, say, Cross Messiah, or say, for instance, EX Trials, where enemy starts with full charge. This is a good way to make use of it and punish it right off the bat. Acg Shot is yet another brand new skill being introduced to the game. Simply put, is more or less a shooting variant of anti-CG, which we saw previously on Blackmail X, but simply to explain it, it is a high base power shooting attack, which draws its bonus damage on the opponent's or the target's Medaforce charge, and not yours. So yet another perfect way to punish people that make use of full charge or Medaforce reliant nukers in general, just to make sure that you can keep their overall use and viability on the field very controlled, and that if they are going to use Medaforce reliant attacks with full charge or charge plant, you're going to very easily punish them for doing so. And then Force Control is more or less just a shooting variant of Medaforce Seal, which we have seen on other bots such as, say, Sycamore, or in fairly recent with Grain. So more or less same case, prevents foes from being able to unleash Medaforce, but it's simply a shooting variant of the attack instead. And once again, his pure set and mixed parts score for these reasons still stand at a 9 and a 9.5 out of 10. Very, very close to making him a 10 out of 10. And if you are a cross main, absolutely 10 out of 10. No questions about it. Especially even as a tank leg, just to go over his stats briefly for that. Very solid base attack across the board on all 3 of his skills, even if Acg Shot is the only one with pierce damage in this form. A mobility of 865 for tank legs honestly makes him very fast even for his lack of mobility, but also pair the G control on top of that makes him even faster and even more efficient still, even tying into the fact that full charge Kai can honestly tie into this and make this very easy to maintain even after transforming. And then of course a melee resist and a shoot resist of nearly 2,000 or over 2,000 each means he's going to be very good at being able to tank blows efficiently without anything potentially crippling him either in robot mode or in tank mode easily.